you have several different brands. You have, at least from my understanding, a mix of sometimes you're upfitting, I don't know if that's the right term, but upfitting or modifying existing vehicles to customize them for your customers' applications. And then I believe, especially with Blue Arc here, you're providing you're serving in the OEM role, providing the vehicle itself. Can you speak to that dynamic and how you make the decision of where you're making modifications and where you're kind of building from the ground up?
Sure. Traditionally, the company has done, as you mentioned, we would take somebody else's chassis and put our body on it. And that would be for the parcel delivery or our fleet vehicle and service division. And why did we do that, or why was it like that? It was, the main reason was our customers would buy the chassis. So they would buy them from different manufacturers. And none of our customers picked one specific chassis for a number of reasons. If there's a recall, that means they shut down their whole fleet. So if we said we're only going to build on Freightliner or a Ford or a Chevy or Stellantis or whatever, it would limit us. So we want to stay agnostic with chassis in the past. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, our customers couldn't find a chassis that met their needs. And we want to stay agnostic on the EV space, right? But the customers kept coming to us. And then late in 19, two of our biggest customers came to us and said, look, we really need your help. We can't find an EV chassis that will meet our needs. And I think you've seen all the activity in the Class 2 space, right? But Class 2, they can't get the payload that they need out of a Class 2 vehicle in the EV space because the batteries weigh so much and you won't get the range. So as we continue to analyze what was coming to the market, we were hoping that someone was going to have a chassis that we could use. There was a bunch what we call skateboards, right, where it's like a low regular passenger car Class 2 vehicle. Nothing was really a framed vehicle, which our customers need, because their facilities, their processes, everything is designed for the current vehicles that are in the market today. So if you give them a different vehicle, they're gonna have to change everything. And that's what they were seeing, is some of these electric vehicles that they were trying, they weren't as efficient, right back to the earlier conversation, for them at their distribution centers. So, you know, we were trying to find a chassis for probably a year and a half, couldn't find one. Then late in October, late of 19, 2020, my apologies. Our customers came to us and said, hey, we need some help. We can't find a chassis. So in 21, we took a few months, got the team together and said, look, what are we missing? We've built custom chassis for almost 50 years in the RV and fire truck space, right? So we know how to do chassis. We've been building bodies in the delivery space for over 50 years. So we have the DNA in the Shyft Group to do this. So we took it to our board of directors and laid out the business plan for them and got our approval. And we announced it in June that we would, June of 21, that we would have an electric vehicle functioning before the end of the year. And we'd have a full EV body by the NTA truck show. Was less than 9 months, and we did it. And it's reasons why is the team that we have, right? They had the experience in both the body and the chassis side. Then we reached out to experts in the space, right? We partnered with, and I constantly tell the team that, Brandon, if we can't do everything, so stay in our swim lane or in our wheelhouse, and let's go find experts that can do it and help us, right? Make them part of the team. And that's what we've done with the batteries, the drivetrain, the suspension, right? And key to us is we also worked with a company to develop the software to operate the vehicle. So now that's our intellectual property. All the other stuff people could buy too, but we needed some way to protect ourselves of the vehicle. Because we thought if we were to buy, right, or partner with everybody, then they could use that somewhere else. So we wanted to make sure that we had something that was, you know, proprietary to the Shyft Group, and that is our operating software for the vehicle, which we developed with a company, and now we have control. We have programmers in-house that can modify that as we need to. But so the real reason was we couldn't find a chassis that met our needs and our customers' needs. So that we went and did it ourselves, because we had that, you know, pedigree and history of 50 years almost in chassis build and body build.
So I think a few follow-up questions. So one, the difference between a chassis and a plate and the skateboard platform. So I think from a kind of uninformed eye, you look at this and it seems like, hey, you're taking a skateboard platform like what several of the passenger car EV companies are, and then throwing a top hat on it.
Right.
Can you speak to someone who maybe not as familiar with kind of vehicle engineering, what we're talking about here and the differences?
Yeah, so if you take a passenger car on the inside, and you take the sheet metal off it, you'll have your wheels right in the front and the back, and so the wheels can move up and down. There's a hump in the floor, right, that your rear seat would be on in the back. And in the front, your engine compartment's open, and there's a lot of space for the wheels to move in there. And it's lower to the ground, right? The ground clearance might be, I don't know, 10 inches, right? Sometimes a basketball can't even roll underneath it. And that's fine for a passenger car. And it's usually in the class 2 space also, which is under 10,000 GVW. And that space is really crowded with, you know, you mentioned a couple of them. You got Rivian, right? You got Bright Drop. You got a bunch of other EV startups in the class 2 space. And we still think there's going to be a problem with payload when you do the math on what's the vehicle weight plus the battery weight and the humans inside the package. I don't think they're going to get the payload needed, because our customers know exactly what they want. They know the range, they know the payload they need. So we decided to move up in the class 3 space, which is over 10,000 GVW, and it goes up to, you know, 14, 15,000 pounds. It's a flat, ours is a flat rail, right? So our tires are much bigger than the class 2 space and the class 3 space. And it gives us an opportunity to have a flat floor inside the vehicle. When a driver has packages in their hand, they don't want to try to step over a hump or down a hump and back up over a hump. They want a flat floor so they're stable and they don't get hurt. And you can't really do that with a chassis from the class 2 space. That's why we went to the class 3, which is the typical framed chassis that we use in the 4, 5, and 6 as well. So it's going to be very easy for us to expand from class 3 to class 4 to class 5 over time with the same frame rails and small modifications. So that was the other piece, is that class 2 is a different requirement, but once you get into class 3 through 5 and 6, it's very easy for us to move into that space with larger batteries, maybe a larger e-axle, right? A little different suspension, but the frame is very similar to what we've been using for 50 years.